Thanks for having me. My name is Bethany Mulhall. I'm one of the environmental scientists in the Kentucky Wetland and Stream Mitigation Program. This is sponsored by the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife Resources. We're based out of Frankfort. I'll just give a quick background of who we are. If anyone has heard about our program, we're commonly referred to as FILO. It's a little bit of a confusing acronym, but it stands for fees in lieu of. A lot of other programs such as this across the country may even refer to themselves as in lieu fee programs. So again, if you've heard about us, you may hear FILO, Kentucky in lieu fee program, or something like that. We've recently marketed ourselves as the Stream Team, and there is a link to our website to the Stream Team. If you're on the main Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife Resources homepage, go to the Fish tab and Stream Team program, and there you'll find a lot more information about our program and what we do, and some information on our projects. Our staff consists of about 10 individuals with different knowledge backgrounds such as engineering, environmental scientists, natural resource specialists, and policy analysts. And we have phased our staff to line up well with project milestones. So for example, we have staff in what we call phase A, which is initial project development. They go out and attempt to find sites. They complete site assessments using various assessment tools. They make sure properties are suitable for easements or purchase, and they will coordinate with different project partners. From there, if they determine a site is feasible, they'll develop a conceptual plan, and this has to be reviewed by our Interagency Review Team, or IRT. This is led by the Army Corps of Engineers, primarily Louisville District, along with some other individuals from Kentucky Division of Water, US EPA, and US Fish and Wildlife Services. We have staff in what we call our Phase B section that deals more with projects as they enter design and planning. So this is when a mitigation plan will be developed, a design will be developed, and we usually coordinate with different consulting firms to complete these tasks. These consulting firms are typically procured with our state procurement procedures via contracts or other mechanisms. We obtain permits during this phase from our regulatory agencies, and we also bid projects out for construction to qualified contractors. Lastly, we have Phase C. This is the phase that I oversee, and we monitor and maintain projects once construction is complete. Monitoring is typically 5 to 10 years, and then maintenance is ongoing. We complete this with our own staff in-house and also with some consulting firms. A brief history of our program and our current operations. Our program was first established here in Kentucky in 2000 under Kentucky state statute. This is how the fund was developed. In 2002, our first draft of our instrument or our agreement with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers was finalized. This set forth our operating procedures we still use today. It went through several modifications over the years, and we're currently operating off the latest modification that occurred in 2018. To date, we've taken in more than $244 million from 2002 to present. Of that, we have completed over 800,000 linear feet of stream mitigation projects, and we have approximately 100,000 linear feet proposed for new projects. And these are in some form of conceptual plan or design or construction. So I'll give just a very brief background of exactly what is mitigation. And essentially, the most basic definition states that it is restoring, enhancing, preserving stream or wetland habitat to compensate for losses to these resources. So ultimately, we're taking in fees that have impacted these resources to compensate for these losses. But there are some other basic requirements that are really pertinent to our program. First and foremost, and what I have highlighted, is all of our projects do require permanent protection. And this is typically in the form of an easement that is attached to the deed, or some kind of deed restriction or other site protection instrument. The mitigation must be in kind. We have to have financial assurances in place. and there must be an element of long-term management. So for all of our projects, we have developed a long-term management plan that is in place as soon as the mitigation plan is created for a project. The types of activities requiring mitigation include numerous things across the state of Kentucky, but more commonly it's large-scale construction type activities, such as the photographs seen here, or large highway projects, mining impacts, different things that create fill into our waters of the U.S. As I mentioned before, as we take in fees from a certain impact, those fees have to be used to fund a project within a certain general location from the impact. So our program currently operates within 11 service areas across the state. As of 2018, we also obtained the Northern Kentucky area. So we are currently statewide. So for example, if impacts occur, say within the Green River service area, our projects must use those funds also within that service area. And the service areas vary in need. There are often times when we have a lot more need for projects within a service area because of the degree of impacts. For example, in the Northern Kentucky area right now, due to the airport expansions, there is a really high great need for projects in that area. But this is really important because this is working within our service areas helps us prioritize projects and facilitate where we need projects the most. This figure shows a distribution of our projects as of 2018. Newer maps would show a few more project points, but this is most of them. And as you'll see, as they're color coded, they're in different project status. Projects all the way that are approved, which means they're in somewhat of a conceptual phase, to those that have been completely released. And that means they have completed the successful duration of monitoring and met their project monitoring milestones. We do have an annual report that is submitted that also provides updated maps and figures that shows these project locations. I'd like to go over again the project milestones, and we really like to touch on these when we're talking to groups that may be interested in partnering with us or learning more about our program, primarily because for us to get a project off the ground, it is somewhat of a lengthy process. So I like to kind of show that each of these steps takes some time. So with site selection, our team will find sites, and this is via different partnerships, landowners that have reached out, different marketing tools and so forth to try to find suitable sites. From there, the site must be assessed, determine if it is feasible for mitigation, also how many mitigation credits the site will likely generate, its likelihood of success, and many other factors. If the site is determined to be feasible, our team will develop a conceptual plan that will require approval from our IRT, or interagency review team. From there, it goes into design and permitting. Again, somewhat of a lengthy process as there are a lot of approval steps to that step as well. From there, it enters construction. Typically, some of our larger construction sites can take about a year or more for construction to be complete. After completion of construction and final planting of the riparian zone, it enters the monitoring phase. This is a minimum of 5 years, but we're seeing on projects now this is being lengthened more to around 10 years. And then it enters long-term maintenance. So our staff or a third-party entity has a role in projects for essentially for perpetuity. Our team goes out to older sites and ensures that the terms of the easement have not been violated and that there are no main issues with the site, such as high numbers of invasive species or any major project failures. So I will touch on some of the partnerships that we have had in the past on our projects. And these are either partnerships that have occurred on executed projects, also with partnerships that we are working towards obtaining on some future projects. And then some partnerships we worked with that may have led to some form of project development, such as site identification. But we commonly work with a lot of federal agencies. Of course, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers oversees our project program and our projects. Other members on this list make up the IRT and help with project approvals. We have worked with the U.S. Forest Service on many projects where we have completed them on the Daniel Boone. And other groups include colleges and universities, where we have developed contracts with these entities for site monitoring or additional biological sampling, and some of the other groups that you'll see listed there. I included a sign from our Hatchery Creek project. It's a large-scale project right below Wolf Creek Dam. You'll note, usually we will have a project sign up and we'll list some project partners there to make the project complete. So here are a few key requirements that are very critical to project development within our program. So our program is very restrictive, and unfortunately there have been some times where we have to really prioritize our projects. There's many we have to end up walking away from just because they don't quite fit the suite of requirements we need for our program. But first and foremost, landowner cooperation is key. As I mentioned before, we require permanent protection on our sites, and this is in the form of a conservation easement, a deed restriction, some kind of site protection instrument. For example, on sites that we have completed on Forest Service properties, the site was protected under their existing forest management plan, but there has to be some type of instrument in place to permanently protect the site. With that being said, mineral rights cannot be severed from the property. Even a oil and gas lease is not acceptable, or those would have to at least be dissolved before the easement is in place. So again, these are some really restrictive measures we have to have in place, and it makes not all properties suitable for our program. Landowners do still have rights to the property. They still own the property. It does not grant any kind of public access, but it does provide access for our team or other constituents, such as our consultants, to access the site for monitoring or maintenance activities. We do take stream size into consideration, in particular, the size of the watershed in relation to where the project will be located. For example, it may not be feasible to complete a mitigation project at the very farthest downstream end of a really large watershed if we didn't have control over large parts of the watershed. This ties into our risk assessment, just to make sure a project would be successful if implemented. We typically select, for stream projects over at least 2,000 linear feet. This has to do just to create a better economy of scale. We mobilize some really large equipment, so it wouldn't be feasible to complete all these large actions without having a good amount of project size that's generating mitigation credits. We look into the degree of impairment, so what kind of shape is the site in and how much ecological lift can be obtained from it. We look at the likelihood of success, again, factors that could result in failures or successes of the site, and availability of the in lieu fees within the service area. So that kind of refers back to that map I showed, that some service areas may not have a great need for project development at the time, but that's always subject to change. So lastly, I'll give a few examples of some successful partnerships with other agencies from the past. So the first project I'll showcase is Elisha Creek in Leslie County, Kentucky, and this is located on the Daniel Boone. This was a great project because staff on the Daniel Boone brought this project to us. They had identified several mitigation projects at the time across the forest, and then as a team, we were able to sort of prioritize and rank them and decide which projects would be most suitable for mitigation. So as you'll notice, the picture on the left is a before picture. And a lot of folks may look at this and think, well, you know, this stream doesn't look that bad. But there are several elements that could use improvement. So for example, the stream is very wide. This is only a 2 or 3 square mile drainage area, so it's been drastically over widened. As you can see on the left side, it's restricted to the hillside, so not much floodplain access, and it's restricted to a bedrock bottom. So bed diversity and channel habitat diversity were very low on this site. We thought that would be a great opportunity for improvement. The photo on the right shows the project area during construction. So as you'll see, appropriate channel pattern is established in the stream corridor. And the 3 pictures on this slide all show after photos of the same site. As you'll notice, the channel has narrowed up much more than the previous pictures. This has allowed for, again, more floodplain connection, and we've actually got a really great vernal pools in this site. There is a lot more ripple and pool habitats here, so therefore increasing bed diversity and habitat. So the picture on the left was taken during leaf off, and the 2 on the right were during leaf on. So you can see the site did create more of a stream wetland complex. We have a lot of great wetland species now along the stream corridor that weren't there before. Another example I'll provide is one that we completed on a parks property. This is a Cove Spring Park in Franklin County, and we worked with the city of Frankfort on this project. Again, this was a great partnership because the city had identified the area for some time as needing restoration. Of course, funding was an issue, so we were glad to step in as a partnership and complete this project. As you'll notice, the picture on the left, very degraded system, really high eroding banks with lots of unstable substrate in the channel bed, whereas the picture on the right is completed and it's pretty much the same area, or the same reach of stream, where now you have stable in-stream channel habitat, you have good connection to floodplain, we've reestablished riparian vegetation, and this just turned out to be a really successful project. This worked out great for the parks too, because even though we do have our conservation easement of a certain width from the channel, the park is still able to maintain a nature trail in the area to allow for some educational opportunities and outdoor recreation opportunities along the stream. This is another view. This is also in Cove Spring Park. It's much further downstream where you enter more of a wetland ecosystem as you're approaching the Kentucky River floodplain. So before, this was simply a ditch line running along this floodplain to the river, and it wasn't really great for trails or walking, or not very scenic. So our restoration project constructed an appropriate size channel and created some wetlands along this project. And again, the parks have been able to maintain a hiking trail along the length of it to allow actually for better viewing access of the channel, and again, more outdoor educational opportunities. So lastly, we had some ideas for the potential for future partnerships. Of course, our program is always looking for potential sites. And I know, there's just a lot of other folks out there, such as ourselves, that are, have boots on the ground. So we would always be glad to hear of sites that may be in need of restoration that could possibly fit our program. In the future, there could be the need for roundtable or working group discussions. Again, it's always kind of nice to know what other entities are working on. That way we can cross paths some, but also not be duplicating efforts, helping each other out to find sites. It is important for others to know a good knowledge of our program requirements. As I mentioned before, our program is very restrictive, especially in terms of the property with, being able to obtain an easement. Like I said, we have to have a completely clean title with no mineral severances or oil and gas leases and things like that. And lastly, we have discussed internally talking about a project ranking tool. which I think would kind of be nice once we have this developed to share with others. That way, if we are presented projects, we can easily rank them. People would know where they stood, and so we would give everybody a better idea of knowing if a project is either selected or we decide to pursue it or decline, to kind of know where we would stand on that. So that concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to take any questions now.